Very fun. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for showing up this morning, sharing the Sunday with me. I'm Tristan. I'm the native plant buyer here at Chenard's. I've been here around 4 years. I graduated at OSU with a degree in ecological restoration, so native plants are kind of up my alley. And yeah, so today it's going to be a pretty short class. I'm just going to go over native plants in general to start, and then I'll take you through specific species that we carry and some that we don't, but that are still good in shade and you may be able to find elsewhere. Um, if you have questions, just raise your hand, or you can save them for at the end because I will have plenty of time to talk with you. So yeah, thank you again for being here. Any questions off the bat that you have? Okay, perfect. And then I also have Zoom, so I'm gonna be talking to them somewhat, so don't get confused. All right. And in Zoom, if you guys have any questions, just put it in the chat and I will get to it when I can. All righty. Let's see. So, real quick. So these photos, these two are taken in our waterfall native garden in the back. Have you guys seen that before? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I'm very excited. I planted a few other plants back there that we've gotten, so it'll be fun to see how it changes this year. Alrighty. So this is just our class itinerary. I'm going to go over the Willamette Valley really fast, show you what native range that I'm speaking from, because everyone has a different definition of that range. So we're going to go over that, what classifies natives, species, individual descriptions. It can seem redundant, but I have cool photos, so that'll be good. And then, yeah, and then we'll talk about incorporating all of them into your garden, and I'll have time for questions at the end. Oh, there's my little graphic. Okay, so yeah, we are of course in the Willamette Valley, and our region is quite unique for many reasons, but one of them being we have multitudes of mountains and different elevation ranges throughout the valley, and that comes with having different microclimates within each part. There's some really deep shade areas, especially around Mary's Peak and all the different buttes around here. So a lot of the native plants I'm going to be talking about today are going to be on the lower sides of many mountains and valleys around here. Um, and let's see here. With the rise of the agricultural development around here too, I mean, native plants have taken a pretty bad hit, since the 1980s. A large portion of Oak Savannah has already been lost. So there's many types of ecosystems that we're really trying to recover around here. And hopefully you guys can be a part of that by planting some in your own backyard. Let's see. So I always like to go over this just to kind of get us on the same level. So what classifies a plant as native? Some people look at it as a continental scale, so North America, South America, such as that. There's also regional scale. So a lot of the time when I'm looking at buying native plants, I look at it from the Pacific Northwest view. So let's like some grow in Southern Oregon, some grow in, Southern Washington, and I still will incorporate those because there are sparse populations that go down into Oregon. So it really is kind of up to the buyer and the person. But ultimately, planting native, especially regionally, is going to benefit a lot of the pollinators and local flora and fauna. Um, but I really try to get natives that are distinctly native to the Willamette Valley, regardless. And then if something is introduced by humans, it's non-native to the area. That, however, doesn't necessarily work when it comes to like Native Americans because they had, transferred a lot of species from Eastern US over here. So it really has to do with like our boats and our cars and shipments that bring in all these invasive species, especially in the 21st century. Um, and then do you guys know about like native cultivars and stuff like that? Because there can be quite a controversy when it comes to that. Um, the efficacy for native flora and fauna with those is kind of dependent on the individual cultivar. Like the Mahonia compacta, this isn't the one, but there is a version that is bred to stay much smaller. Those ones are still going to be effective for pollinators because the blooms are still the same. The flower structure is intact. But when we start breeding out certain characteristics of flowers and such, that can be an issue. So if you're going to get a cultivar, just, look into that and make sure the morphological characteristics aren't changed too much to alter the pollinator's ability to actually utilize the plant. Yes.
How do you find out that?
So Oregon State has some, like the Extension Service has some pretty good pages on the cultivars, especially Mahonia, Pacific wax myrtle and stuff. Oh, and the Ribes sanguineum I have down there. That one is still going to be effective because they haven't bred the flowers to really be much different. But the big thing is when they breed differences in flowers. Because you know how some have double blooms and stuff? There's no nectar in that, so it won't be as effective.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, and then let's see, cloning is pretty useful. However, you can homogenize the population, so it's only really an issue using clones when it's a large scale restoration project. When it's for us homeowners and stuff like that, they're still going to have their uses because we're not going to bottleneck the population and limit the genetic material. So they're still good to use. Um, and then let's see here. What else did I have? Yeah, some nativars are hybrids. So some like Mahonias, they'll interbreed them, and that can create certain hybrids that are still effective, but not the best because they are new and the insects won't quite recognize it as a Mahonia per se. So yeah, and ultimately, it's up to the individual to decide whether to get cloned or hybrid, and they're still going to be effective regardless. It's better than getting something that's from Asia or something where the species won't recognize it as useful food. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the individual species descriptions. This is of the fun part for me. So all these species I do have, maybe not at the moment, but I'm going to be getting successive orders in. So yeah. So this one is the Acer circinatum or the vine maple. These are all throughout our forests around the Corvallis. They're typically in the understory, and they are called vine maples for a good reason. They're multi-trunked typically, and they'll be sprawling, grasping for light throughout the canopy. And when you have them in a landscape, they can handle sun or shade, but the deeper the shade, the better usually for them because you don't have to water them in, and they have quite an interesting shade. You can prune them quite easy. I usually do mine once a year. Oh, that's fun. And yeah, so to prune it though, because I know a lot of people want like to tame it and have a singular trunk, and that can happen. You just have to kind of be patient and prune it correctly. But it's a broadleaf deciduous tree. It can get up to 10 to 20 feet tall, multi-stemmed. They can send suckers up, so you do want to be wary of that in the yard. And then in the fall, if they're in sun, like quite a lot of sun, the fall color is a bit more vibrant. If they're in the shade, it kind of won't shift as much. It won't have that period of color. But they still are just beautiful in the shade, especially. I like how sprawled and sparse they get. It looks pretty cool. So, yeah. And we have these all the time. And in the same vein as cultivars and nativars, this one, the Pacific Fire. That one is more for sun if you want that red color. So they bred it for that bark color. So it still is a useful pollinator resource because they've just altered that aspect of it. But this one's been heavily bred and hybridized, so you can get quite a few different varieties with that. And then, so yeah, I only have two trees on here. There are other shade tolerant species, but I just don't carry them very much because there's not a huge demand. But this is one of my favorites, the big leaf maple. I'm sure you see these all around. Their flowers are actually very, very beneficial for a bunch of different moths and bees and such. So really useful pollinator resource. They are a shade or sun plant again. Um, if they're in the shade again, that causes sparse canopy growth, but as long as you prune it correctly, it will be quite dense if you kind of prune it a certain way. They can get quite big if they're in sun, though. They will get 70 to 100 feet, so quite large. But
Flowers are beautiful.
they are. I just see these all over mine at home. It's beautiful. So I do have them out here, out in the shrub yard, but they're in like 1 gallon containers, so quite small. And then moving on to the shrubs. So, of course, we have Mahonia aquifolium, the Oregon grape. So all my photos that I have are either from here or from a really good resource called Oregon Flora. You guys heard of that? Yes. So definitely check them out. Oh, we have a question. Can big leaf maples be kept small and shade? Yes. So if you keep them pruned, they can stay small. Usually, if you prune them once a year, that should be enough to kind of tame it. But yes, you can. You just have to be an active gardener in that sense. Okay, but Mahonia, Oregon grape. It's our state flower. They flower really early in spring, as you can see that one right there. That one's been flowering since mid-February, so it kind of ranges from February to March to through April. These are highly adaptable, although you see them placed in our cityscape all over, and some are looking real scraggly. I feel like people don't, they'll plant them and kind of leave them. It is nice to prune them and kind of shape them somewhat to really give them a good structure. Um, they prefer part shade, so a lot of these will want dappled sunlight or something like that. But these can handle full sun, but they just don't do as well. And then let's see, a lot of different moths and stuff. This is like their first food of the year, so it's really good if you want to attract those insects. And then, there's the Mahonia repens, which is the ground cover. That one's very high in demand all the time. That's a really good one as well. It gets up to, I think, about a foot and a half and then spreads from there. It's a really good one. That one also has a few cultivars derived from it. And then Mahonia nervosa is more of that one's the full shade. That one can be in the canopy without any really dappled sunlight. It has longer leaves than these, so if you look at this, it's very curly. They extend outward much more and are flatter, not as pokey. But that one is quite hard for me to get my hands on. But yeah, that is the nervosa is the most shade tolerant though. And
I
then
heard that
yeah, it's not invasive, but it can be a little bit, it can get kind of out of hand. That's why I always tell people to prune it and keep it in shape because it can look a little scraggly. So it's good to prune it for sure, but not over prune it either because then it can, they don't grow super fast. So it does take a minute. Okay, this is one of my favorites. This is the Oso berry. He's sitting right next to one. They're actually in the process of flowering right now. When they're in the ground, the flowers are a bit bigger. When they're in pots and younger like this, they don't look as magnificent, but they're honestly one of my favorites. Jackson Fraser, they have a bunch down there. They're a wetland plant. However, they can be drought tolerant once they're established. So you don't need a super moist site, but however, they do prefer that. The berries are edible, however, you do want to like cook them and do all of that, more of like a jam type thing. But the wildlife really do love those berries, though. They are dioecious, so male, female. The way you can tell is through the flower, depending on the stamens and the anthers, but it can be kind of hard to tell. But so if you want fruit, you're gonna have to have two. And let's see. Yeah, they're early bloomer. They can get quite large, but again, pruning is your friend in this situation. Um, don't let that, deter you from bringing it into the yard if you're able to be active in the garden. Yes.
What about water? Because I know
Yes.
you talked about shade.
Mm-hmm.
How much water do some of these things?
So Mahonia, yes, thank you. Mahonia can dry out quite well. That one's a dry shade.
Okay.
This one's a moist shade.
Okay.
But it can also be a wetland plant. So if you
Yeah.
get those like big, swells of water in the winter, then that's a good choice. Yeah. Oh, and what's nice about Ommelaria is it's monotypic, meaning it's the only one in its genus, which is quite
Oh,
interesting. It's very, unique in that sense. Yeah. Next. Elderberries. So have you guys seen these out hiking? Yes. If you go to Echo Basin and the Cascades, there's a whole grove of them. It's gorgeous, but these are one of my favorites. I have one that's 2 years old. I got it in a gallon pot and it's doing quite well. I have mine in under a tree. So it's actually surprisingly because they don't want full shade, but they can handle the dappled sun. So I had that chart in the beginning with like full shade is 0 to 2 hours, part shade is, 2 to 4. And under there, it gets about 3 hours of direct sun. So they do need some of it, but they're a great food resource for many fauna. The inflorescence is very dense, so it is worth the insects while when they're there. Um, and they like moist, well-drained soil. You know, in the summer, you'll have to irrigate maybe once every 2 weeks in the beginning, and then you're good to go once they establish. These ones don't get as big as the blue elderberry, which is nice because the blue elderberry can become a tree if you let it. Let's see here. Okay, Rubus parviflorus. This is the thimbleberry. So these are one of my favorites. I just love the leaves. They get huge. So these can handle sun and shade. But you typically find them on the edge of forests where they're getting, around 4 to 5 hours of sun every day. And again, moist, well-draining soil, but they are drought tolerant once established. And the berries are actually quite good. I mix them with salmon berries and make a little jam every year, and it's quite good. Um, and yeah, they're gonna spread through rhizomes, so they can become like a mid-tier ground cover if you let them, kind of under the canopy. But yeah, they're a great choice, and they'll flower May to June. But not their flowers are short-lived, and then the fruit will be ready in about July or August. Okay, yeah, here is the blue elderberry. So as you can see, I mean, that grove right in the bottom right corner, they can get quite crazy, but they're a very good resource for both us and the flora and fauna around here. So yeah, and you can make these are the edible ones. The red elderberry you don't want to eat. Those are for the birds. But these ones we can make, syrups and stuff like that from. They do flower more when they're in full sun, but in shade they will still do okay. And let's see. Okay, this is one of my favorites. So this is the ocean spray. Now, if you have one of these in your yard, they are going to attract all sorts of pollinators, especially the because they're earlier blooming. So you're going to get a lot of the mason bees and the digger bees, leaf cutters, all of those. Their leaves are toothed and lobed, which I really love the look of. Um, they don't really have a crazy looking fall color. They kind of just get yellow and brown, but they are gorgeous regardless. They are a larval host for a few of our butterflies and moths. The spring azure, brown elfin, and Lorcan's admiral are a few, and then really good resource for bumblebees as well. And then the seeds are also eaten. I can't remember exactly what eats them, but there are a few like mammals that will predate on those. And yeah, they do best in part shade, but they can handle full shade as well. Again, just less floriferous, so not as many flowers when they're in the shade, but regardless, you could do it.
Can they be trimmed?
Yes, yes. All of these can. I'll let you know when if there's one that's specifically not meant to be pruned. Salal is one you're going to want to prune, especially after 2 years they get quite tall, and if you want it to stay a ground cover, you gotta top it, or else it can look a little crazy. But yeah, so they're gonna be a dry shade plant, although they can handle some moisture. Of course, it's an organ. But their flowers are like little urns. They're very, very pretty. But again, you have to tame them. They're gonna be active management. You can't just let them get crazy. I mean, you can, but be ready for a thicket of it. If you go by the Safeway back here, they just pruned a bunch of them because they were looking really scraggly and crazy. So, and we always have salal. The salal, yeah, they are. Yeah, I think they're a little astringent, but they're not very good in my opinion, but you can't. So Ribes sanguineum. So these ones are quite versatile. They will have more flowers in the sun, but they can also handle shade. If you go to the Coral House Park, there's a hedge over there, and that gets decent shade pretty much all day, but it does have about 5 hours of sun, and they do great over there. So definitely, if you want some good flowers, especially earlier in spring, it's a really good choice. Yes.
So you can trim this to be a shrub?
Absolutely, yeah. In many parking lots, they have it like a hedge, like right here. The Coral House, theirs is a pretty tall hedge. It's not topped, but they do the siding of it. Um, I really like their fall color too. They're very pretty. And then this one, so there's the King Edward nativar. That one's just bred to be a little more compact, and more dense with the leafing pattern. This one is a King Edward right there. So still a very useful resource. It's budding up and getting ready to leaf out, so it'll be exciting. And then this one has been bred quite a lot. It's very popular around the country and the world. So it's one of our top sellers from Oregon, I would say, in regards to native plants. But if you want to hedge, you're gonna have to mass plant. So do like, we're very close together and let them kind of grow in and out of each other. Um, King Edward. So I believe in the photo at least, I have one in the class, but the one with the hedge right here in the bottom left is the King Edward. All right.
And is this
Yes.
similar to the pink, flowering currant? Like,
It,
I have the pink one.
yes, yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. So the color ranges. Some are like white and pink, some are darker red. That can also be due to the shade and sun that they're in. So yeah. And then let's see. This is another one very similar to ocean spray, but I really love the structure of these. They're very funny. This is called goat's beard. It does great in shade, but thrives in dappled sunlight. It blooms continuously, kind of like not a still bee doesn't, but they look like a still bee, but they'll keep blooming through midsummer typically. They have toothed leaves. The new growth is like bright, bright green, so it's a really nice showy thing for the late winter. They're just emerging. I have one over here. It's on the shelf over there. You can see the red tips kind of showing kind of right now. But you see it growing in there? Yeah, they're really cool. I love when they're emerging. But yeah. And let's see, those are going to be dioecious. So the male plants tend to have more flowers. The females are still, they still have flowers, but much less than the males. I, it's really hard to tell though. It's really hard to tell. So many pollinators rely on this. The syrphid flies, many beetles actually prefer these. And then there are some morning cloak butterflies that really use this as a host. So yeah. And then if you couple this plant with like a native willow or the hawthorns or wild roses, there's larval hosts on those plants that couple quite well with the goat's beard. So it's definitely good to think about interspecies relationships when planting if you're really looking for that insect home in your garden. And then everyone knows the Pacific. So now I'm going to talk about perennials, but this is Dicentra formosa, the Pacific bleeding heart. This is going to be a really good shade ground cover. It does need a moist area though, so make sure water is able to actually penetrate whatever tree canopy is under there. So under oak trees, anything deciduous is going to be a really good option because when that sun isn't there in the winter, it lets rain and moisture in, and then it gets covered in the summer. Um, the leaves are all kind of like fern-like, which is very cool, and they're very soft. You can use them in floral arrangements. Pretty cool. And then these are rhizomas, so you can propagate them if you dig them up and then cut a little section. You can plant it elsewhere. Many of the ones I'm going to show next, you can do that with. And then yeah, but they really do need a moist habitat. And then Tomea menziesii, the piggyback plant. Have you guys seen this one around?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you go, I find a lot of them in Kings Valley, although they're everywhere, but that's where I like to hike sometimes. So they're all around the rivers and riparian zones over there. This one is another one that is monotypic, so it's the only one in its genus. These are just like the bleeding hearts in the sense that they do not handle drought very well. So you do have to have a moist area. Um, in the summer, you can dry it a little bit, but you're gonna have to irrigate if it is pretty dry. Their flowers are very interesting, really small, but certain hummingbirds will go after them, and certain butterflies and such. Yes,
Were those sold as houseplants?
I
Go.
I think so, actually. Yes, I think you're right on that. Yeah, 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 and I mean, I think because it is monotypic, so if it was, but I think there also is another houseplant called piggyback plant. So you know how common names get jumbled. But the flowers vary from purple, cream to green. It's very interesting depending on the light exposure. And these ones, again, you can dig up, cut, and propagate. Okay, and then this is one of my favorites. This is the oxalis, Oregon wood sorrel. These ones, again, need moist shade. They can handle drying out though. Like I have mine under a our awning on our house, and I water it maybe twice in the winter because it is so dry over there, but it does quite well. It just needs to establish. If it is in a protected area, it can be semi-evergreen too. So definitely a really good choice. And they're really charming. I love the look of them.
Yeah.
And again, rhizomes. These are really good if you want to propagate and give them to friends or whatever. Just cut. They have orange like corms or rhizomes, yeah. And you can cut them and just pot them really, really easy. Let's see here. Trillium. So this is a classic one. I just brought in quite a few trilliums. So there's some out in the shrub yard, but these can be kind of tricky to get to establish. You need aged, like old soil that's like has a lot of rich organic matter in it. If it's freshly amended, it likely won't have the correct fungal communities living in the soil to actually make the plants happy. So you could amend or add mycorrhizae that could help, but you definitely want aged forest products in your soil if you're going to plant these. They do prefer a drier site, and so under the canopy, like a lot of these you're going to see growing directly under a tree. Some oak trees, some firs, it depends, but yeah, they're really beautiful once they're established. It can be quite hard though. You'll have some die off, but they're really good ones. So yeah.
Do they
hmm
transplant from one place to another?
Not very easy. So, like, if you were to get that one in the gallon pot, you wouldn't want to, you know how you typically agitate the roots? Wouldn't do that. You just kind of set it in, be really gentle with it, and it should establish that way. But if you have freshly amended soil, though, I wouldn't plant it there. I would let that soil establish a little bit or add some mycorrhizae into the soil. And they also grow through rhizomal growth. And there's also a bunch of other subspecies in the state of Oregon. It's really cool. I'll show you in the next slide. But very early blooming. They're about to bloom. So this one is chloropedilum, that guy over there, and this is ovata. Ovata can be pink and white. It's kind of it depends on the genetics that you happen to obtain. And then Kurabayashi is a very, very. I just wanted to include it. We don't sell it typically, but it's a very interesting looking species. That's going to be in Southern Oregon, kind of Klamath Valley, that area. But I love the look of that one.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And some of them also have the carrion smell. So some are really fragrant, some smell like flesh. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, let's see. And oh yeah, they also have a few mutualistic relationships with ants and mice who take their seeds back to their burrows, and that's where they germinate, just like the Pacific bleeding hearts. So really cool. And then here's another one of my favorites, Erythronium oregonum, the white fawn lily.
Yeah.
I have these as well. These are in the same vein as the Trillium, where you want a pretty well-established soil matrix, basically. So one with a good, fungal community living in there. If it's a fresh planting, they likely will die, and you don't want to disturb the roots very much.
Oh,
Yeah,
the field of them,
where at?
I think it's near Cascade Avenue.
Oh,
It's in that area.
yes,
I mean, it's a whole
it's
lot.
gorgeous.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you need to get the word that they're blooming, and it's unbelievable.
I forgot about that place, but yes, I have walked past there, and they spread through rhizomes, so it's a nice
Yeah, they're so
long-term investment. But
That's
and then I have another one next that's really pretty. This one's more of a coastal one. This is Erythronium revolutum. This one's gorgeous. I love the pink one. These are going to need more moisture. They're going to be a bit harder to establish if you want it over here. But regardless, very, very gorgeous. And I'm getting some of these in a few weeks. But yeah, and then yeah, just shade, moist habitat. But they do not want to be wet in the winter. So in the summer, they do need minimal irrigation. But in the winter, like if it's under a gutter or something, it will not do well. They rot really easy, so kind of interesting. They do need to dry out somewhat. Which one? Because they're typically under canopies and stuff of the forest. They can handle moisture, just not like too much where it comes up where the water level comes up to the soil bed. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. Yes. And then summer, don't really irrigate at all because they're gonna die back
Yeah.
by July or so. And then what else? Ah, Dodecatheon. So these are gorgeous and they are kind of similar to the fawn lilies in the sense that they spread through those rhizomes under the canopy of a tree. Another really good dappled sun plant. Um, they can be quite hard to come by sometimes, but they are one of my favorites too. Another ground cover. Their leaves aren't very showy. The main thing you're going to get is the flower stalk. And again, those will die back pretty early in the summer as well. But really gorgeous. And we have various other subspecies within Oregon. So it's one of our, just like chacramello and Trillium, it's another like speciated one. And they're in the primrose family. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. And then I have, oh, and then Vancouveria hexandra. So these guys are very similar, I would say. Their leaves are very similar to bleeding hearts. They have that soft, frilly texture. Um, they can handle full shade. I mean, they will tolerate it and do great. They do want pretty rich soil. So again, those aged sites are really good for them. If it's a new soil bed that you've just started, probably don't do that. And then they are going to be a good ground cover. They'll spread through rhizomes and such. The flower stalk gets about 16 inches. And yeah, their fruit is very interesting. It's a purple little fruit with very small black seeds in there. And certain insects and stuff will utilize those. Um, but yeah, they're gorgeous. I haven't been able to get my hands on any this year, but we'll see. And yeah, and I just love the structure. You can see why they're called the inside out flower. But yeah.
I like the leaf shape.
I know, it's really cool. It kind of reminds me of the epimedium too. But yeah, really, really gorgeous one. And then of course ferns. So this we're getting to the end here. So I like to kind of think of the ferns in two different categories. So the maidenhair fern, those are going to be like your moist wetland ones. So you see them growing on alongside waterfalls on the sides a lot. So if you have a water feature, definitely put those in. But they can also establish in other sites, but you're going to have to supplement some moisture typically if they're not quite established yet. And then the Western sword ferns can handle quite a bit of sun as long as they're getting irrigated enough or shade. They're very versatile in that sense. Like I have some neighbors, they get sun like 8 hours a day and they have the most massive Western sword ferns. So they're pretty versatile in that sense. And then deer ferns are similar to the Western sword fern. However, they do prefer more drier sites and still in full shade. So, and I have some deer ferns down there next to you guys over there. Yeah. Let's see. And then we're getting to the end. Perfect. So that's all the species that I have for you guys today. There are some that I didn't talk about, like Distantia. This is a grass that can tolerate the what's it? I don't even know the Latin name, but this is a tufted hair grass. Yes, so that's a really good one if you need a grass for a shady site. They get quite tall and they'll get about up to here, so it's a nice backdrop. And then I just like to kind of throw this in here. If you're ever interested in getting involved, I mean, Benton County has a lot of different programs, OSU Extension, um, the Homegrown National Park, that's Doug Tallamy. We partnered with him, so we're listed on his website, and they post different native species for your region and then talk about the native insects that rely on them, which is very useful. It's hard to find that kind of information. And then, yeah, those are some of my favorite places to go and check up on the restoration. I actually worked a little bit on the Denali Creek restoration, and it's doing pretty well. So, yeah. Let's see. And then, yeah, these are all Oregon Flora references. Thank you guys so much. I hope, do you have any questions?
Yeah,
Yes,
yarrow. Is
yes,
that a native?
it is. It's a native. Yeah, those typically need more sun, although they're very versatile. So you can do it in shade. They might not be as fluorescent, like they're not going to have as many flowers, but yeah, they can adapt to it. Just make sure they're not getting too wet. That's one of the main things. But
Okay.
yeah.
And the second question
Mhm.
is, do you find that some of this information is changing with climate change?
Good question. So with climate change, I mean, our climate is just getting a lot more erratic. So I mean, I don't want to say that we're going to be getting warmer because a lot of people do suggest because there's a term climate refugia. So as temperatures and climate changes, going up latitudes, the temperatures are going to rise. These native species are still going to do okay here. I think like broadly, we are going to be seeing a lot more harsh winters that could affect everyone's plants and everything here. So it's hard to say. I don't know, but we certainly will be affected.
And the fires also.
Yes.
Will be
Yes.
kind of changing.
If they clear our forests, yeah, it'll completely kind of reset those forests into a primary stage of succession. So it will change the plant communities. However, the native plants will still be native to here, and you can still plant them. But yeah, it's hard to say fully, but it is. This winter's been bad. It's not good. There's like no. I'm from Bend, so I go through that pass a lot, and there's like no snow up there or nothing. So, but I hope we get something, but I'm losing faith in that. I know. What's that?
You mentioned a grass.
Yes.
Doug, I have some mixed emotions about planting grasses. Are they useful for
Yes, especially as a habitat. So, yeah, a lot of things will nest in there. And so it's really good to kind of keep the tall grass because people love to mow. I mean, it's the British way of gardening. It's good to leave tall grass. So, because I rent and I like to meadowscape, so I get away with still having something in habitat. So I like to just carve out little pockets of tall grass and I just leave that. And it honestly looks pretty charming. But yeah, it is good to have grass for sure. It kind of completes that whole food triangle and stuff for the insects. So yeah.
We've got one like that, and it's almost entirely down and sitting on the ground, but
Okay.
there's little bits in the middle still. It is
Yeah.
like
So that, I mean, the die-off from this is the previous year, that will protect the new growth as it comes in. And these, I think, were growing a bit more protected. So yours is probably still just emerging and needing some more
so
time.
we shouldn't get rid of the dead stuff.
No, no, don't get rid of it. I mean, you can, of course, like that's not an issue, but it definitely provides protection and stuff for certain good insects and such. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys. Was that all? Perfect. Let's see. Oh, thank you. I gotta check Zoom. Oh, yes, Kathleen, I will do that. Let me go back. Oh, guys, don't forget your coupons. Hold on. Wait. There you go. Okay. So let's see here. Here's yours. Thank you. Here's yours. Oops. And thank you. Where you got? Oh, okay, perfect. Here's yours.
You want to print your jacket? Oh, yeah.
And I'll get you one. Oh, thank you so much, you guys.
And I got cold.
And so you're going to OSU?
I will be, in like
Sweet.
a year and a half, 2 years,
That's
but
so
yeah, I
exciting.
started at Shemeketa, so.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you in Salem now? Or are you living down here? Oh, Staten. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a drive, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like in between and college and stuff.
I know.
Perfect place.
I should have got a degree in horticulture because now I'm like realizing that that's more my.
Your jam,
My
yeah,
jam.
yeah, when you said like what you graduated, like what your degree was. I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
But I do appreciate Chenard's giving me the opportunity to like have the native plant program
Yeah.
here. It does fulfill that aspect. So
Yeah, that's exciting.
yeah.
Exciting.
What was your name?
Nikki.
Nikki, Tristan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sure.
I'll see you around. No, it's cold, man.
Where is this beautiful bathroom at?
Yes. Oh, okay. Go in the doors over here and then go to the right. It's out on the south side.
Okay.
You'll see it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Okay, Debbie. Dry shade under a Doug fir. Okay, so under the Doug firs, here you go. Sorry. Lovely seeing you.
Good seeing you.
Let me see. So, how I talked about the trilliums and fawn lilies? Those can handle the drier shade under there. Mahonia. There's also the native huckleberries that do well under those. You could even do like Mahonia repens, that ground cover would look pretty interesting down there. As well as the thimbleberry. That does quite well. Yes, you can pick up the coupons. Please come in. I love it when the Zoom people show up, so don't feel like you can't come in. I will definitely give you the 10% off. So, yeah. And then, yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you all showing up.